Okay, this is a video for Chapter 17 of Advancing Vocabulary Skills. So this is on page 102 if you want to follow along. So let's take a look at these words here, and I'll read them out to you, and you can take a guess at their meaning. So the first one is complement. Next one is discrete, then fastidious, then flout, then heinous, then implement, then impromptu, then inference, then intuition, and then obtrusive. Okay, so here's our first one, complement. So complement is a verb, which looks weird because it ends in ment, but this one actually is a verb. So the new singer's voice complemented the other voices, rounding out the group's sound. A red tie would complement Pedro's gray suit and white shirt, giving the outfit a needed touch of color. And complement means to go perfectly with. On page 103, it's number 9, to add to something or someone what is lacking or needed, round out, bring to perfection. Now, here's a word that's really easy to confuse. Complement and complement are the same pronunciation, but the difference is that one is with an I and one is with an E after the PL. So complement with an I means like something nice that you say to someone. But this compliment that we're using doesn't mean that. Compliment means in this sense means that it goes with something else and makes it better. So in the first example, the new singer's voice complemented the other voices. It means that this new singer added to the other voices and made the whole better. In the second one, the red tie complements the gray suit and white shirt. It means that adding the red tie makes his whole outfit look better. So complement means that it's something that you add that makes the whole of something better or work better. Okay, so our next one here is discrete, which is an adjective. Once the teacher realized Jared could not read well, she made discreet efforts to give him extra help. She didn't want to embarrass him in front of his classmates. Be discreet about these drawings, Wilson, the boss said. Don't show them to just anyone. We don't want another company stealing our designs. So discreet in this case means cautious. So discreet on page 103 is number 5, wise in keeping silent about secrets and other information of a delicate nature, prudent or tactful. Okay, so what discreet means in this case is the important things is that you know when to be quiet. You know when to keep a secret. So someone who's discreet is someone who you can trust with telling a secret, that they're not going to share it with someone else. Discreet can also be used in terms in which it's more similar to the word from the last chapter. What was it? Insinuate. The question I ask you on the question is I believe it's how insinuate and discrete are similar, and students in the past have had a hard time with this. So let me just talk about the similarity that I see between the two of these. So when you're discrete, it means that you're not being very obvious about something. It means that you're carefully wording something. You're not coming right out and saying it. So similarly, when you insinuate something, you're not coming right out and saying something. You're implying something very obvious about it. So therein lies, there's the similarities in there. But again, remember that discrete here is often about keeping secrets or knowing when to share things and knowing how to share things. So the next one here is fastidious, and this one's an adjective. Tilly was a fastidious housekeeper who vacuumed every day, dusted twice a day, and never allowed so much as a pencil or a safety pin to be out of place. A fastidious dresser, Mr. Lapp never leaves his home without looking as if he just stepped out of a fashion magazine. So fastidious means very particular. On page 103, it is number 10, extremely attentive to details, fussy. So what fastidious means in these examples is it says here she's a fastidious housekeeper. It means that she takes a lot of care to keep the house clean. So she's vacuuming every day, she's dusting twice a day, and won't let anything out of place. In the second example, he's a fastidious dresser. He's so careful and attentive about his appearance that he looks like he's a model. He steps out of a fashion magazine. Now, fastidious is, I guess it depends on how you take it, but it's generally not a compliment. One of the other definitions it gives for it is fussy, and fussy is definitely not a compliment. Fussy means that you're concerned, that you're worried about every little detail, and you need things to be just a certain way, that you need them to be so particular. Now, in some situations that might be a good thing, but in other situations it can be really annoying for other people if you're too fastidious about something, if you're too concerned about everything being exactly so. This can be an annoying thing. But this may just be my bias because I am not a fastidious person. So I tend to get a little bit annoyed by people who need everything to be perfectly organized. I'm sure people who like things that way would see fastidious maybe as more of a compliment. All right, so flout. This is a verb. My neighbors were evicted from their apartment because they flouted the building's rules. They threw trash in the hallway, had loud all-night parties, and just laughed at anyone who complained. The men in the warehouse are flouting regulations about eating on the job. Wastebaskets are filled with sandwich wrappers and empty chip, pretzel, and nacho bags. So flout means to mock and defy. On page 103, flout is number 1. To treat with scorn or contempt. Defy insultingly. So to flout means that you're not following the rules, but not just that you're not following the rules. You're not being discreet about it. You're not being careful about it. You're being very open in your disregard. That the way that you're breaking these rules show that you don't care about those rules, that you think that those rules are stupid. In the picture there, right, there's a sign that says strictly no parking. It's very clear, right? But this person is flouting the rules, right? Is like, I don't care that the sign's there, I'm going to park there. In the first example, the neighbors flouted them. When people complained, they laughed at them, right? They flouted the rules. They threw trash in the hallway. They acted in a way that showed that they had no respect for the rules, and they didn't care about breaking them. They knew that they were breaking them, but they didn't care. The same thing in the next one. They're flouting regulations by eating on the job. They're not trying to hide their cheating. They're doing it very openly. So an example of this that might happen in class is that if a student with their cell phone, one of our rules is that you can't use your cell phone. But if the student were to hold a conversation in the classroom on the cell phone, this would be flouting the rules because it's very clear that they're breaking them. It'd be very obvious to everybody else that they're breaking them, and it shows a lack of respect for the rules. Okay, so moving on to heinous. This is an adjective as well. The child's murderer's final heinous act was taunting the victim's father as the guilty verdict was announced. Millions of people were shocked recently by news reports of a heinous act. A woman had locked her little daughter in the basement and starved her to death. So heinous means wicked. I would also use the word evil. I don't know if it uses it here. On 103, it's number 7, extremely evil. Yeah, outrageous. So heinous you need to look back over the book, and there's a couple of words that you can find that are synonymous to this. But to describe something as heinous means that it's so evil that any normal person couldn't imagine ever doing it. So in the first example, this man had murdered a child, and when he was found guilty, he was taunting the father of the child, right? In the second one, this woman had locked her daughter and starved her daughter to death. It's bad enough. It would be bad enough to kill your daughter, God forbid, but to starve her to death, it just is so incredibly evil. Implement. So this is a verb. Again, here's another one like we had complement, right? ment. We think it should be a noun, but it's actually a verb. NASA expects to implement its plan for a mission to Mars in 2015, which it did. This is an old PowerPoint. Brett is full of ideas about starting his own business, but he never follows through and implements them. And implement means to put into effect. On page 103, it's number 3, to carry out, to put into practice. So implement means that you have a plan and you do the plan, right? So implement, well, you may have heard the word about implementation. That means when you're actually doing the thing that you said you were going to do. So in the first example, the mission to Mars, all the planning happened beforehand, but the implementing happens just when they actually do it. In the second example, we know people who we call them big talkers. They say all of these things they're going to do, but to implement them means that they actually do them. So to implement means that you actually do the plan that you've already talked about. Okay, so our next one here is impromptu. This is an adjective. My speech at my cousin's birthday dinner was impromptu. I hadn't expected to be called on to say anything. When Maya discovered that she and Barry had both brought guitars to the party, she suggested an impromptu duet. An impromptu means not rehearsed. So on page 103, impromptu is number 6, performed or spoken without practice or preparation. Impromptu means just that that something has not been planned before, but is decided exactly at that minute, right? So let me give an example. In addition to these ones, when I was in high school, I used to do impromptu speaking. Now, most of the time when you do public speaking, you write out your speech beforehand and you plan out what you're going to say. Or if you were to do a debate with someone, again, you would plan out what you were going to say. But the way that impromptu speaking worked is that you were brought up on stage and then you were given an envelope, and you were given, inside the envelope, you were given a choice of 2 topics to write about, and that you had a minute to think about those things, and then you spoke for 3 to 5 minutes on that topic. And that's why it was called impromptu speech, because it wasn't planned ahead of time, it was just done in that moment. All right, so our next one here is inference. This is a noun. Ruby said with a wink, "Did you notice how Uncle Joe's hair has miraculously grown back? My inference was that he was wearing a toupee." "Where did you buy those pork chops?" asked Harry. "Why, what's wrong with them?" Maria asked, making the inference that he didn't like them. An inference is a conclusion. So we had a whole chapter on inferences. On page 103, it's number 8, a conclusion drawn from evidence and assumption. So in this case, an inference is a guess at something or a conclusion about something that you make based on evidence that is presented to you. It's not just a random guess; it's an educated guess. Is an inference. So it comes from the word infer. So in our first example, the inference was that he was wearing a toupee. A toupee is like fake hair that people wear once they've gone bald. So she's saying, did you notice, do you notice how his hair miraculously grew back? He didn't have hair and now he has hair. So the inference is that he wore a toupee, the conclusion that you come to. In the second one, um, uh, in the second one where he says, "Where did you buy these pork chops?" The inference is that there's something wrong with them, or that he didn't like them, because why else is he asking where he bought them? The other possible inference is that they're very good, um, and he wants to know where he can buy some. So either of those could be possible inferences. But an inference, again, is a conclusion that you make based on evidence. All right, so the next one, intuition. So here's one that follows our rules. So this ends in tion, so this is a noun. I paint by intuition, the artist said. In a flash, I see how a work should look. I don't really think it out. The minute I met your mother, my father said, my intuition told me we'd get married someday. Intuition is instinct. On page 103, intuition's number 2. Instinctive knowledge, a hunch. So when we talk about instinct, we have a saying in English about a gut feeling. It's a sense of what is right or wrong. Um, that's not based on facts or evidence, but it's based on how something feels. So intuition is different from inference, right? And inference has to be based on evidence. It's a conclusion that you make based on evidence. But intuition is what your gut tells you, your stomach tells you to do. Whether you think, does this feel right or does this feel wrong? That's what your intuition is about. So, for example, if you were take this as an example. If you were if you were hitchhiking, if you were trying to get a ride from somebody on the side of the street, and someone pulled over and offered to give you a ride, you would probably, by looking at that person, by judging from their behavior, you'd get a sense, do I feel safe with this person or do I not feel safe with this person? That's your intuition working, right? It's not based on intelligence or anything. It's just based on a feeling that you have about what you should or shouldn't do. Obtrusive. So this one's an adjective. The huge, sprawling new mall seemed obtrusive in the quiet little country town. My brother's stutter is often hardly noticeable, but when he's nervous or in a hurry, it can be obtrusive. It can become obtrusive. And obtrusive means overly obvious. I'd say it means more than that. On page 103, it says undesirably noticeable, and I think that is the better meaning. Obtrusive means that it's if something is obtrusive, it means it's getting in the way, meaning it means that it's causing a problem, because it's so obvious. So in the first example, the new mall seems obtrusive. Like, this is a quiet little town. This big new mall is disturbing the atmosphere. In the second one, a stutter happens when someone, when they talk, they can't form the words fully, so they'll get stuck on words. So they'll say something, but it's hard for them to get out the word, is a stutter. So if when it becomes obtrusive, it means it becomes so bad that it's a problem in communicating. So to describe something as obtrusive means that it's getting in the way of doing something. It's something that is so obvious that it gets in the way. I don't know if any of you guys have cats, but sometimes cats can be very obtrusive. Sometimes I've seen videos of these. I've just gotten cats, and they're not obtrusive yet, but But sometimes when you're like if you're typing on your computer, if your cat wants your attention, they may walk in front of your computer and step on the keys, basically preventing you from doing whatever it is you want. That's obtrusive, meaning it's getting in the way. They're being overly obvious. They're right in front of you, so it prevents you from doing what you need to do. Okay, so I'm going to pause here. Go ahead and do the online activities and do the questions, and we'll review those in class. Take care. Bye.